She was a star writer who seemed to vanish without a trace. Starting in the 1920s, Elsie Robinson built a writing career that spanned nearly 4 decades. She became one of the most well-read columnists in the United States. For adults and children alike, Robinson was a household name. Yet today, she's largely unknown. One author would like to change that. I speak to Allison Gilbert about her new book about Robinson's incredible life and career.
Listen World, written by Gilbert and co-author Julia Shires, uncovers the little-known story of Elsie Robinson, whose nationally syndicated column gained an audience of more than 20 million readers.
Her life reads like a novel, and yet she's erased in a sense, and yet she was the most read person out there. I mean, people loved her.
Not only the most read, she was the highest paid writer in the entire William Randolph Hearst media empire. And it enraged me that she would just be completely forgotten, erased from the history books. I mean, what is that? How can a woman be that famous, and that not just fame, but this indelible presence in print, where she was provocative and she stirred emotions and she told people the way it was about many issues of the day, to just poof, be gone. And so our attempt, my co-author and I, we wanted to restore the legacy of this incredible American icon.
Robinson was born in 1883 in Benicia, California, into a family of few means. She married young, then divorced, and left to care for her sick son. She tried her hand at other jobs before her writing career took off.
Her whole story is really about grit. I mean, she grows up, and one of the things I love that you do in this book is you weave some of her writing in with your writing as well, and your co-authors. But we see her talking about putting on corsets, and I read that to my wife. I mean, you're just dying laughing, reading all this stuff. And she rebelled against everything. And, when she first got her first break as far as working in a newspaper, having a column, she was destitute. I mean, in the book, you write about how she basically scrapes together some food to give to her son. I mean, she's thinking about becoming a sex worker. I mean, it's amazing.
I love the part of Elsie Robinson's story that has nothing to do with journalism. And that may surprise you. The part of the story that I think speaks to most readers is that no matter what you want to do, if you don't have money, if you don't have contacts in the business or the profession that you want to go into, how do you get there? What is in you that gives you that resolve to keep going despite every obstacle that would warn you not for you, for somebody else, but not for you? I love the fact that there is lessons in Listen World, no matter what you want to explore in your life. I think it's ultimately about self-fulfillment, self-advocacy, and going for it. And that's what really spoke to me throughout this entire journey, writing what really is the first biography of Elsie Robinson ever.
So you went in knowing this woman's amazing, but as you were kind of researching it, what were some of the things that jumped out at you that surprised you?
Well, I love the fact that she worked 600 feet below the surface of the earth as a gold miner. She was the only woman on a crew of men because she couldn't find any other work. You mentioned that she was contemplating being a sex worker. She didn't go down that path. She did find work in the gold mines of all places that was not hospitable to women underneath the ground. There were plenty of women above ground, let's say tending, to the home fires, cooking meals for the miners. But no. Elsie Robinson was actually digging for gold to make ends meet for her chronically ill son. And so to me, that was surprising. And it took a lot of research to find the details. We had to really excavate her story. Elsie Robinson, in her memoir that was written in 1934, only talked about the region where she was a gold miner, but never named the specific gold mine. And so my co-author and I, Julia Shears, we did that research. We excavated where that could be, and we worked with the state of California to really figure out, based on the clues that Elsie Robinson left behind, what mine that was, and we determined which one it was. And that, of course, opened up many avenues for additional research. How much gold was produced in that mine? What years did it operate? And why did it eventually close? Which really forced Elsie Robinson's hand to finally go back to Oakland, California and get her first newspaper job.
Elsie Robinson's career began with writing and illustrating stories for children in the Aunt Elsie magazine for the Oakland Tribune newspaper. Her story spawned Aunt Elsie clubs, with kids joining by the thousands across California.
She was a branding phenom. She knew how to market herself. She knew how to get eyeballs on the page. And one example of that is she invited children to submit their poems. She invited children to submit their drawings. And why was that so clever? Because of course, parents would then want to buy the newspapers where their children had their art and their writing published. I mean, it was genius. And then there were parades that were held for Aunt Elsie clubs. There were dozens, hundreds of clubs throughout the entire state of California where kids started dressing up as their favorite Aunt Elsie characters that she would draw. So she really became this remarkable phenomenon in the entire state of California, which eventually caught the eyeballs of the editors who really wanted more adult content, and that's how she transitioned to writing for the grown-ups.
And I want to talk about how progressive she was
Yes.
at the time. I'm going to read a little bit from page 233. She supported labor unions, scoffed at prohibition. She denounced the death penalty as inhumane. Stone Age punishment, she called it. After the Nazis rose to power, she advocated repeatedly in defense of Jews and urged Americans to take our stand in support of Jewish refugees. She called out racism, condemned violence against people of color. It goes on and on. Some of this stuff, probably not very popular at the time. It's interesting, as she was also a feminist.
But she would never use that word.
Exactly.
She would never use that word.
But one of the things that jumped out at me, and I'll get it wrong, but you can correct me. There's a cartoon, you mentioned this, or drawings, where it's a woman and a broom, and I think it said we're equal or something like that. It was very
You're
funny.
in the same class as me. Yes.
So talk to me about that, because I think one of the things that's really remarkable about her is that she had this huge following, but she was saying stuff that, some people might take offense to.
Male readers even took offense to the name of her column, which was Listen World. That's how we got the name of the book. So male readers, some of them, would take issue with her. Who are you to tell me what to think? Why don't you stay in your lane with the children, talking about marriage, talking about household economics, how to cook and clean. That was their perspective, even taking issue with the name of her column, not even the substance of her column, just having the hubris to call her column Listen World, like listen to me. I am a woman telling you how to think. I mean, she was quite brave and bold and courageous, and that showed up in the content of her articles. And I think that the reason why she became so popular is because she nudged, because she pushed so many buttons. She wasn't willing to sit back and let life roll over her or any other reader. She wanted to give light and oxygen to these other points of view that she felt so deeply about.
Her marriage, the gentleman she gets married to is older than her. They meet in California. She has to move back. There's this whole kind of class privilege thing.
Yes.
And to the point about her being bold, at the time, unfortunately, a lot of women would be like, well, it's just my lot in life. I'm stuck with this horrible man. It's a loveless marriage, but this is the way you live. She had none of that. She wanted to get out, and she did.
If you are judging a life based on the good fortune of privilege, if that's your criteria, Elsie Robinson had it made. She was married to one of the wealthiest families in all of Vermont. She lived in a 37-room mansion. Her life was taken care of in terms of her needs, but not the needs of her heart. She felt suffocated. She wanted more. She wanted to express herself. She wanted to live this fuller, larger life. You mentioned that in that poem, Pain. She wanted to live a larger life. And so no amount of money could do that for her. She felt really constricted, and she used her pen, she used her pencil, she used her writing to bulldoze herself to a richer experience, which again, I find to be part of her story that just gets me every time. If you wanted to be comfortable, and that's all you wanted out of life, that's where she could have stayed until she died. But it wasn't enough.
One of the things I love about her is that she's timeless, because she kind of sounds like she's speaking to us today. One of the things she talks about is anger, divisiveness, hate doesn't get you anywhere, love. I mean, it seems like something that you could be addressing this nation, especially right now. There's so many divisions. I mean, did you find that?
Yes, I find her to be a timeless writer, which is why it's so heartening to kind of resurrect her legacy. I think when I read her words about capital punishment, about racism, about feminism, gender equality, these are all things that we're still talking about today, which is why it's been so much fun to make sure everyone knows the name Elsie Robinson.
You've been a journalist and an author for quite a few years now. It's interesting to read about all of what she had to go through as a woman trying to break the glass ceiling. And then I wanted to get your take on how much of that's still there, the misogyny and all the brutal things that you probably had to deal with too coming up.
It's still there. I don't know. What are you talking about? What world do you live in? Of course it's still there. But the strides that we have made are remarkable, of course. And there's progress that's still to be done, but look how far we've come.
And you're helping to carry that forward.
Well, trying. Thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Despite Robinson's own memoir and her trove of writing, today many Americans don't even know her name.
Let's get back to the erasure of her, because she disappears. You do talk about why that happened, and you also I think it's fairly honest how you point out that she's kind of responsible for part of it. Talk to us about how someone can be that famous and then drop off the face of the planet until you resurrect her.
Gosh, there are so many theories that my co-author and I have about why Elsie Robinson has been completely forgotten until this biography. And one reason that you just alluded to is that she doesn't get a free pass. I mean, we all know that we're mortal, but she knew she was famous. And there was a realization, of course, that there was all this writing that she had amassed over the course of her career. And so she could have donated her papers to an institution like the Bancroft Library in California. She could have donated her materials to her high school where she went in Benicia, California. There were choices that she did not make to curate her own legacy. And because her only child died so young, she couldn't rely on that either, which of course was a part of her life for years before she died. So she wasn't caught unaware that this was going to be a problem, and yet. And so I think that there are lessons here for the rest of us about how we want to be remembered, even by our own families, and what we must do to make sure that we're leaving our papers in a way that our children or our children's children can learn who we are. You're lucky you have TV clips that you can leave behind. That is one part of your record, which is wonderful. And I'm sure many of them can be, Googled, or you can watch them online. In Elsie Robinson's case, because of her productivity existed before the digital age, she couldn't have anticipated someone searching for her online. And because nothing or very little had been digitized before our work, you could not find her when you Googled her name because she hadn't been digitized yet, if that makes sense.
But we should also probably give her a pass, because when would she have time? I mean, you're pointing out she's working all the time. She doesn't get a vacation. I mean, this woman was a factory.
Well, she was a workaholic. Her son was chronically ill his entire life. She needed to make a living to keep him fed, clothed, and with medicine. She was doing it on her own, and it's really hard to imagine the alternative and the fear she must have experienced about letting her son down. So in a perfect world, there's work-life balance, and there's a way to compartmentalize your work life and your personal life. These are all, I guess, positions of privilege. And I don't think she had that.
Let me ask one final question, which is writing. And I'm not going to find a quote in here because I'd have to lift through the pages, but she writes about, she basically had always written. It was something that was in her. She just loved to write. And I think about the writer, which you are, and that, you put it to page and you put it out there. It's like sending your kid off to college. You hope that they graduate or whatever. You want people to read your book. But
yes, read the book.
But that's not all of it, though, is it? I mean, it's just that it's got to come out. I mean, you worked on this for so many years.
Yeah.
I mean, the research alone that went into this, collaborating on it. Can you talk to me about that fierce desire inside you to write, to get this out into the world? To basically tell them, listen, world.
Let's see. Obsession, perseverance, sure, doggedness. There was nothing that was going to dissuade me from writing this book.
You do say, though, in the acknowledgments that
yes.
you had to be kind of, at one point you were like, I've had it.
You
had to be
hard.
talked off the ledge.
Of course, because writing books, especially the first biography of a historical figure, is really hard. There's not a roadmap to follow. We were lucky we had a roadmap, in her memoir, but that is her point of view that needed to be vetted and fact-checked, right? When you write a memoir, that's the version of your life that you want readers to know, but that's not what a biographer does, or else it would have just, been done. She wrote a memoir, move along. But a biography, you need to interrogate every fact that Elsie Robinson wrote about herself and make sure it lined up with reality. And so there was work to be done, and it was painful. It took many years. I found out about Elsie Robinson when my mother died nearly 30 years ago. It was 11 years ago where I told my literary agent, this is my next book. I am writing this biography of Elsie Robinson. And then I struggled. It was really hard. And then about 4 years ago is when Julia Shears, my incredible co-author, and I came together to take this baby over the finish line. And she was an invaluable partner. If she was sitting here, she's based in California, she would be, because it is a work of passion for both of us. And I could not have written this book without Julia Shears.
Allison, thanks so much. Great talking to you.
Oh my gosh, such a pleasure. Thank you.